Turnarounds are one of the most important tools in jazz, and this is because they give both compers and improvisers different pathways back to the one chord. Once you learn a few essential jazz turnarounds, your playing will sound instantly more professional and polished. And in this video, you're going to learn 3 essential jazz turnarounds and the advanced harmonic concepts behind them. We're going to cover stuff like secondary dominants, tritone substitutions, and diminished passing chords. And these are all concepts that the pros use to make their comping and improvisation sound more authentic. What's up, everybody? I'm James Melton, jazz guitarist, composer, and music educator here with Learn Jazz Standards. Be sure to stick with me to the end of the video because not only will you walk away with 3 pro-level jazz turnarounds, but I promise that the advanced harmonic concepts behind them will revolutionize the way you hear and play jazz. So let's cut right to the chase. What is a turnaround? A turnaround is a short chord progression, usually at the end of a section or tune, that leads you back to the beginning of the tune. Instead of just sitting on a tonic chord for 2 measures, a jazz turnaround takes a more interesting harmonic path that gives improvisers and compers something interesting to play through. For example, a common turnaround is a 1-6-2-5. In the key of C major, that's going to be C, A minor, D minor, G7, and C major 7. And we use this to get back to the top of a form, to the 1 chord, to return to the tonic chord. All of these are diatonic chords, and all that diatonic means is that they come from the same key. So in C major, you're only going to see chords built from C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. There's no surprises. There's no harmonic surprises. But here's the thing. Jazz harmony is known for its rich and colorful palette. And the real magic happens when we go beyond diatonic harmony. So in this lesson, we're going to explore jazz turnarounds that use non-diatonic chords to take us back to the 1 chord, because that's where all the harmonic interest happens. Along the way, we'll use jazz concepts like secondary dominants, diatonic substitutions, tritone substitutions, diminished passing chords, and parallel chords. And these are all important tools that give your comping or improvisation a polished and professional sound. So let's dive right into the first turnaround. This is the dominant 3, dominant 6, dominant 2, 5 turnaround. Dominant 3, dominant 6, dominant 2, dominant 5, 1. This turnaround makes use of secondary dominants. A secondary dominant is simply a dominant chord that temporarily makes another chord in the key sound like home. Normally, in the key of C major, the 2, the 6, and 3 chords are normally minor. If we stick to regular diatonic harmony, our turnaround would be minor 3, minor 6, minor 2, dominant 5, and then 1. But instead, we're going to change the quality of all these chords into dominant chords so that each one will briefly tonicize the following chord. Here's how it works. So our 3 chord is going to act as the 5 of our 6 chord. Our 3 chord here, when we make it dominant, is an E7. E7 is the 5 of our 6 chord, which is A minor 7. We're going to make our 6 chord dominant, and that's going to serve as the 5 for our 2 chord. And we're going to make our 2 chord dominant, and that's going to serve as the 5 of our 5 chord. It's our 5 of 5 chord. And our 5 chord is already our 5 of 1 chord, and that's already a dominant chord, and that's our G7, which will take us back to the 1. So we have a dominant 3, dominant 6, dominant 2, 5, 1. By turning these chords into secondary dominants, the turnarounds gained stronger momentum, and that's because of the half-step pull in the voice leading. For example, a diatonic 3 chord, or E minor, has a G natural in it. But when we turn that into a G sharp, we end up getting a half-step pull to our A, the following chord. Same thing with our A7. When we turn our A minor 7, our 6th chord, into a dominant chord, the C becomes a C sharp, and that gives us a half step pull into our 2 chord. And likewise, when we make our 2 chord a dominant chord, we have a half step pull towards our 5 chord. And when we make our 2 chord dominant, we have a half step pull towards G, F sharp to G. Secondary dominants are a comping tool you definitely don't want to overlook. And this jazz turnaround is a great way to start internalizing the concept. Let's listen to it in context. This next turnaround works a lot like a 1-6-2-5, but it introduces 3 essential jazz harmony concepts that you can't ignore. And that's diatonic substitution, diminished passing chords, and tritone substitution. First, let's talk about diatonic substitution. Notice the 3 chord. Even though it's diatonic in the key of C, it's actually a substitution for the 1 chord here. Diatonic substitution replaces a chord with another from the same key that shares similar chord tones and function. For instance, in C major, you could swap your C major 7 with an A minor 7, or the 6 chord, because they share similar chord tones. A C major 7, C, E, G, and B shares many of the same chord tones with an A minor 7, or A, C, E, and G. They share that core C major triad. Likewise, you can substitute C major 7 with an E minor 7, which is what we do in this turnaround. C major 7 again is C, E, G, and B, and E minor 7 here is E, G, B, and D. So our E minor 7 is functioning like a C major 9. Let's look at the second chord in our turnaround. Instead of using a 6 chord, we're going to use a diminished passing chord to connect the 3 chord to the 2 chord. A diminished passing chord does just that. It's a diminished 7th chord that connects 2 diatonic chords that are a whole step apart. This creates smooth chromatic voice leading and adds tension that resolves naturally as we move from one diatonic chord through the diminished passing chord to the next. In the case of our example, the E and G from the E minor 7 moved down by a half step to E flat and G flat in our E flat diminished 7 chord, and then move to D and F. So we get this, helping move our ear through the changes. Finally, rather than a plain old 5 chord, we're going to use a tritone substitution. A tritone substitution replaces a dominant chord with another dominant chord a tritone away. This gives a smooth chromatic movement from the 2 chord to the 1 chord. Notice the bass line here. D, D flat, C. But how does this work? Tritone substitutions share the same guide tones. Guide tones are the 3rd and the 7th of each chord. In a D flat 7 chord, our guide tones are F and C flat. C flat is enharmonically equivalent to B, so they're essentially, to our ear, the same pitch, even though in theory they're different notes. Because they share the same guide tones, the harmonic pull of the 5 chord is preserved even when we're using a tritone substitution. Notice how similar they sound. So in this one jazz turnaround, you're using 3 powerful jazz harmony concepts: diatonic substitution, diminished passing chords, and tritone substitution. And these are all tools that the pros rely on when playing through changes. Let's listen to it in context. Let's move on to the next turnaround. Next, we have the Tad Dameron turnaround, which is also known as the Ladybird turnaround. This turnaround is one of my personal favorites. It first appeared in the Tad Dameron tune Ladybird, and has since become a classic turnaround that jazz musicians use all the time when comping and when improvising. It starts on the flat third, which is acting like our 2. It moves down to the flat 6, which is functioning like our 5. Moves up to the flat 2, which is like our 1 chord, before it resolves down by half step into our true 1 chord. However, what makes this turnaround so interesting to me is that all the chords share the same quality. Even though the root movement looks like it would be a normal 1, 2, 5, 1, resolving back down, the quality of each chord is the same. So we have a major 7th chord, an E flat major 7th chord, an A flat major 7th chord, a D flat major 7th chord, and before we go back to our C major 7th chord. When you move the same chord quality around by different intervals, that's called parallelism. And it's an important jazz harmony concept that this turnaround helps you internalize. Let's check it out in context. If you want more tools like this to transform your comping, check out the Learn Jazz Standards Inner Circle. Every month we learn a brand new jazz standard together, and you get access to our entire library of courses, and you get access to our community of jazz musicians who love jazz just as much as you do. You'll never be practicing alone. You'll find the link down below in the description. If this lesson clicked for you, check out the other video linked right here that builds directly on what we were talking about today. And hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.